How's it going? I thought I would try do something a little bit different. So I'm talking to you before I have my counselling session, and then maybe hopefully try to check in with you afterwards. Time being on my side, because I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit late, a little bit behind. My counselling session starts in about 10 minutes. I should make it, all being well, I should. But yeah, so there's a couple of things that I want to talk about to my counsellor just to try and get to the root of things. And one of them is a situation that happened last week where I will hold my hands up and say that I did do something. I was in the wrong. I opened the car door and it ever so slightly bumped a van. Now, I didn't feel at any stretch that the velocity and the force that I opened the car door was enough to cause any sort of damage at all. But everybody's reaction to me just felt like an overreaction. The problem that I've had is when I've worked various different careers and it's been with, oi, lads, there's always a lot of banter. So, you bump something and everybody makes a big deal out of it, and the reality of it is it's nothing. A similar thing happened. So everybody's made a big deal out of it, and it's just been a week of endless jabs and jabs and jabs and jabs and jabs about how heavy-handed I am and how, just reckless and all this sort of stuff that I am. And it got to Thursday and somebody made a little remark and I said something back. I will admit it was a little bit salty, but it was also just as much banter as, what was said to me. Well, Monday morning rolls around and I get dragged into my work office. I get sat down and I get we need to have a talk about your attitude, which kind of stung a bit, because all it was an onslaught of them saying how my attitude sucked, how I handled the situation sucked, and how I was unfair on the Thursday when I spoke back. And it kind of sucked a bit because I sat there thinking, so why is it okay for everybody to jab me that entire week, but that one time that I say something back, I'm the one with the attitude problem? It's made me feel kind of quite annoyed because they're sitting there saying I have to apologise to everybody, and I kind of feel that I'm being forced to apologise for something that in my head wasn't anywhere near as bad as what everybody's making it out to be. So I do feel a little bit salty about that, but it also goes back to what I was saying before about not feeling that you can be the person that you are and how everybody tries to force you into a narrative. And that's what I mean about everybody telling me that I have to apologise. It's like I feel like I'm being forced into a direction that I don't feel warrants it. It's like if I have to apologise for opening the door onto this van, which, by the way, left no marks or whatever, but I have to apologise for it, then surely everybody else has to apologise for being massively passive-aggressive with their snarky comments towards me. Because the problem is, I said to my boss, it feels like all these comments were just banter, so I didn't really understand the depth that apparently the situation is. And my boss is like, well, yeah, they were just banter. So it's like, so what is it then? Is there a problem or isn't there a problem? Because the way that they're talking about stuff, it's just all laughs and jokes. But then for me to be sat down and basically given a stern kind of, talking to, it's like, well, clearly there is a big problem. And it just made me feel like, when you have people in your life, and for me it was like a couple of ex-girlfriends, where something happens and it's like they say, oh no, there's no problem. But then their patterns of behaviour and just the way that they are about things, the way that they do things clearly states that there is a problem. It's like, why can't people just talk to me one-to-one or just, take me aside and say, look, this is kind of a problem. And do it there and then. Don't wait a week. So, I don't know. I'm going to go speak to my counsellor about that and try and get to the bottom of it, see what there is there, whether it's just me just being a bit of a diva and, I was in the wrong, in which case, fair enough, I hold my hands up, or whether there's kind of more to it. Because every time I have these little conversations, it turns out there's a lot more to it, and then I get kind of emotional because you dig deeper and deeper and deeper and you realise something happened when you was a kid, and it sits with you a lot. It does sit with you a lot. There's also a couple more other things, people's attitudes, how they've just been in general, how I can't talk to some people because if I try and talk to them, they turn around and say, "Why are you attacking me?" And it's just like, I'm not even attacking you. I'm just, you know. Case in point, I mentioned that my dad seems to be doing something. He's more sociable now as he's getting older, and I said that's a good thing. And somebody in my family turned around and said, "Well, I never stopped them before." It's like I never even, you know what I mean? I never even suggested you did. It was just like boom, full on attack, and it's just, man, it's getting tiring talking to the counsellor and finding out that there's just certain people in your life who are able to twist anything and make it about how you were like attacking them, even when they were nowhere near the conversation or even near the topic at all. But I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like I'm just being a diva. You know, I just feel like I'm just either too sensitive or I myself am overreacting, or you just, I don't know. I got to admit, like this last couple of weeks, things have started to get really tough mentally again. They seemed like they were settling down, and then it's like randomly they've just picked up. So I don't really know what's going on there. Nothing's particularly changed, but yeah, it's not that I'm struggling, not yet anyway. But I've noticed that there's been a mood shift, and I'm trying to fight against it. But I don't know. It feels like it's kind of seeping in a little bit at the minute. Anyway, I've got to go, so I'm going to be late. I'll catch up with you after counselling. So, I mean, it's a bit later after counselling. By a bit later, I mean like a lot later. I've done work and everything, stayed longer at work. Anyway, how did it go today? Yeah, yeah, it was all right. You know, discussed the issue, as it were, with the counsellor, and they were sort of a little bit puzzled by how other people have handled the situation as well, in terms of making like a little bit of a joke about something that turned out was actually more of a big deal than it was, and how it can be misleading, and then how all of a sudden it was like, you know, an expectation of me to apologize because of how I'd replied to them or how I'd replied to this person on a Thursday or whatever else. But it was okay for them to kind of jump on me, and that'd be fine. And it's like a little bit of a laugh and a joke and a banter, so they could see where I was a little bit narked with it, a little bit, you know, whatever. He sort of said, "So, you know, what's the solution?" It's like, basically, I'm going to apologize to the people who I'm told that I have to apologize to, because at the end of the day, I don't want any sort of like weird situation there. It's part, I guess, of being a grown up and shouldering the responsibility for your actions, even if you don't necessarily, you know, those actions versus the outcome weren't exactly, yeah, but it is what it is. That's life. But we also kind of went down a road of something that was said to me when I was a kid. And I say as a kid, it was like, I must have been mid to late teenagers, probably 16, 17, around that kind of place. So, yeah, whatever. And it was something that my mum said to me, and how it was just a one off thing. It was just a tiny little one off comment, but how it cut real deep. And it was a case of, if this person would still be here, you wouldn't be like you are. Now that cut me deep, because when somebody says you wouldn't be like you are, it made me feel like, okay, so I am this bad person. It's really hard to explain, but it made me feel like I was one of those off the rails teenagers who, you know, probably did everything possibly wrong, was always in trouble with the law and everything. But the reality of it is, I was such a square teenager. I was such a, like, I kept myself out of trouble. I tried to be a good kid at school. Even when I hung around with friends and they got up to no good, I tried to keep away from it. I tried to be like, as, I don't know, as good of a child as my parents would have expected me to be, I think. You know, I kept out of trouble and all sorts of stuff. As a result, you could argue my childhood was pretty boring because I didn't do anything exciting, or, you know, I didn't step out and do stuff daringly. So when a parent turns around and says to you, you know, if this person was still around, you wouldn't be anything like you are, you sit there and you go, holy hell, how bad am I? And that really cut deep, because I haven't ever
done anything out of line or anything like that. So for those words to kind of come with the velocity that they come with, like, it sat with me for what's it been, 20 something years now. And the counselor is like, what do you need in order to kind of understand or let go or whatever the situation? And it was like, I need to know what was it that was so bad. The problem there is my mum's not even going to remember saying it. So asking her what she was talking about, it's never going to be. So I don't really know how you kind of find closure in that situation. That's something I got to work through. And, speaking with the counselor about it, he didn't really give me much help in that respect. And what my understanding is, a lot of people expect the counselor to tell you the answers. They're not there to tell you the answers. They're there to like help you negotiate a path of your own, so that it's like your own path leads to the answers. So I don't know. I don't know, but it's interesting how a lot of the stuff that affects me in today is obviously, as with most people, is stuff that's happened way back when you're a kid, and it's just how it ingrains into you, and it comes a belief system. It's something that the counselor is always saying is like, you take on this, you have the feelings that you feel around situations, because in your upbringing, if a situation happens, for example, if something happens and you are to blame, right, as you're growing up for a kid, and you find yourself always being the one that's blamed, it then becomes, what does he say? Not like a pattern of behavior, but it becomes your belief system. So if something goes wrong, it like internally, it's automatically you believe it's your fault, even if it's not. That's just how it is. So because you believe that it's that way, it sticks so much easier than probably the truth where it isn't your fault at all. And the hard thing is breaking that belief system when it's what's been reinforced into you for so long. It's really interesting, genuinely really interesting, how a lot of, as individuals, a lot of our faults are sometimes the faults of others, in that they were going through their own stuff, and how they reacted, acted, responded to a situation has then impacted us, instead of them acknowledging and realizing it was their negative belief system that was kind of dented them. It then gets put onto you, so it becomes your negative belief system which dents you, which you then unintentionally, everything's unintentionally, it's very rare that it's done, pure intention is there, but you then pass it on unintentionally to somebody else. I find it really interesting, but I also find it really exhausting, because a lot of solutions, or a lot of ways to fix it, is like asking people sort of like why, you know. And I don't know many people out there that would be okay with you turning around and asking them why. Why did you do this? Why, why did you treat me like that? Why, people don't want to have that conversation, because they don't want to maybe acknowledge that potentially they unintentionally did something wrong or that hurt you. I do find counselling really interesting from both sides of it. Like, I find myself talking to the guy and saying everything that I'm saying, and listening to their response coming back. It's like understanding their thought process, how they get to the point where they say the stuff back to you that they get to, and then how it kind of triggers and tickles your own brain into looking at things at a different perspective that potentially for your entire life you didn't even realize was a perspective. And normal is a biggie, because there are a lot of things that we do that we just assume are normal, but the reality of it is everybody has a different normal. What's normal to me is going to be different to you. What's normal to you is going to be different to somebody else. For sure, there's going to be overlaps, and that overlap might be huge or it might be minimal, but there's always going to be an overlap, and it's like more social situations, for example, or like it's normal to go to work because it's what everybody does. But just because everybody does it doesn't mean that it's normal. Does that make any sense at all? In a way, right? Normality is, I would say, defining normal is as difficult as defining love, because love means so many different things to so many different people. Normal is exactly the same, because what you believe is normal is only normal to you based on all your influences, all your upbringing, and everything else. It might be completely alien to somebody else who has a completely different set of skills to what they define as normal. I find that really interesting, and it is so stupid as it is. When I spoke to the guy and he goes on about normal, and I said, well, we were talking about relationships, and I said, I don't really know what it's like to be in a normal relationship. But, you know, you see all this different things, but I've never experienced it, so I don't, what is normal to me is not normal to somebody else, you know. And it was that the penny dropped about what is normal that kind of really, it really makes you think, you know. It really does make you think that you assume you're normal to be everybody's normal, and it's not the case. It's really not the case. Now, if you are willing to sit there and think about it, I think you can have some real decent thought about it. And that's what I mean. Like I say, there's obviously overlap. There's obviously a lot of overlap. But is there overlap because it's, you know, socially kind of overlap? Is it what's expected, therefore it's normal because it's what the masses do, you know? Is it normal to eat breakfast in the morning, or is it just what we've all been told to do and you grow up with it? It's the whole monkey on the ladder thing, isn't it? Where, was it 4 monkeys in a cage, bananas in the middle? If you go up the ladder, the monkey gets the electric shock, and then you like replace a monkey. So when you get to a point where a new monkey comes in, if he goes near the ladder, the others beat him up, and then you replace and replace, and eventually all you have is a load of monkeys that just beat each other up when they go near the ladder, because that's normal. But no one really understands why. The reality of it is they're just beating each other up because that's basically, where's my light? Oh, so they just beating each other up because that's their normal. The reality of it is, it's not normal just to, you know, beat another monkey up because I've gone near a ladder. That's not normal. But yeah, I find it really interesting. I really do. Normal is not as black and white as it seems. We only think there is a normal because it's based on a majority, I guess. Hope you've had a good day. I'll talk to you again. Take it easy, and yeah, bye.